Did Game 7 of the NBA Finals mean the Pelicans made a mistake in trading for the 23rd pick in the draft? I'll tell you what, it was still a smart move despite the Tyrese Haliburton injury. Plus, we've got a mock draft surprise. It's the Tuesday episode of Locked On Pelicans. Let's go.
You are Locked On Pelicans, your daily New Orleans Pelicans podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Welcome to another edition of Locked On Pelicans, the daily podcast covering your favorite team, the New Orleans Pelicans and NBA, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day, available wherever you get your podcasts and available on YouTube. I'm your host, Pelicans Insider, credential member of the media, Jake Madison, at NOLA Jake on Twitter, here with y'all on this Tuesday, and we are going to look at the Pelicans trading for the 23rd overall pick. Is it already a mistake? Not so fast. I'm going to tell you why I still think it's a smart move. Then we're going to look at Tre Johnson sliding to the Pelicans at 7 in ESPN's latest mock draft. Then we got a roundup of some big rumors, particularly around the Charlotte Hornets in the third segment. So let's break it down in today's episode of Locked On Pelicans. Today's episode of Locked On Pelicans is brought to you by FanDuel. Right now, new customers can get $150 in bonus bets when your first $5 bet wins. And of course, thank you for making Locked On Pelicans your first listen today and every day. We're here Monday through Friday, the #1 Pelicans podcast covering everything you want to know about this Pelicans team. So please subscribe wherever you get your podcast and join over 11,000 Pelicans fans on YouTube as well. And become an everydayer. That means you listen Monday through Friday to the Locked On Pelicans podcast. And don't forget, you can watch Locked On Pelicans 10:30 a.m. every weekday over at the Gulf Coast Sports and Entertainment Network, where you watch the Pelicans games, which is pretty cool. So let's get into the biggest news of the day, and that is the Pelicans trading the Indiana Pacers, the 2026 first-round pick that they got from the Toronto trade with Brandon Ingram, trading it back to the Pacers in exchange for the 23rd overall pick in this draft. So you get the 23rd overall pick for sure and gave away, who knows what it would be, the future draft pick here. And this is back into focus after in Game 7, Tyrese Haliburton tore his Achilles. Let's just assume that he's going to be out for all of next season. And that kind of changes the fortunes for the Indiana Pacers. And now all of a sudden, the 23rd pick, when that pick next draft was going to look like it was going to be worse because the Pacers are good, all of a sudden, maybe is higher, could be better, could be a top pick. Hold on for a second. While the timing is unfortunate, and look, we're obviously not happy that Tyrese Haliburton got hurt. We never root for injuries in any player. And while the timing is unfortunate, I don't think this would have changed much, let's say, for the New Orleans Pelicans. This trade was about the Pelicans getting another guy that they want in this draft class, not about packaging picks to trade up or anything like that. This is about them getting another guy that they want and also adding some cheap depth. I've gone at length, the everydayers know this, that their salary cap situation is not great. Being able to add quality players for cheap is not an easy thing to do. You can do that with the 23rd overall pick. They're not going to really have much available in free agency. You may as well draft a guy with some upside that could fill the same kind of role that a guy that would be more expensive in free agency would cost without that upside of becoming better. So this is about the Pelicans getting another guy that they want, adding some cheap depth when it comes to it. It's not about as much maximizing the pick or something like that. And I have said, the everydayers know this, if there's a guy you like, if there's a player you want, go and get your man, even if it means you've got to pay a little bit more to do that. And that's kind of what the Pelicans were doing here. You know, even though the Pacers were in the finals, and let's say Tyrese Haliburton is healthy, who knows what next year would have held for the team, and that pick could have been different. But I also think even with the injury, the Pacers are still going to be good next year. I don't think people realized how good they were in 2025. They got off to a terrible start to the year where they were actually below 500 for a while and then got better. You know, and they were below 500 like for about a third of the year. Then they became exceedingly good. And it culminated with that run to the finals where they lost in Game 7, right? They're absolutely a playoff team next year, especially in the East without Tyrese Haliburton. 41-41 is the 6th seed in the East next season. You know, you could even almost be below 500 and be the 6th seed, right? That's easily doable for that Pacers team, even without Tyrese Haliburton. And that's their floor, right? That's the worst case for them. Let's call it 500. That puts you around the 16th or 17th pick. Yeah, it's better than 23, but I don't think the difference there is that much. Like, this isn't going to be a lottery pick next year for the Indiana Pacers. Better than 23, but that's the floor. They could easily get to 45 wins, I think, which is putting you around the 19th to 20th pick. So it's a couple pick difference at this point. And I don't think that's going to change much materialistically for the Pelicans here. Beyond that, there's a couple of things that I think you need to consider about this now too. I think about this of like time value of money, right? The money now is actually worth more than money in the future because you can do something with the money now, whether that's you just gain interest on it, invest it, whatever it might be. Same thing holds true for some players here, right? Get a guy in the building now, can start their development. So whoever you take at 23, let's take this, and next year's draft class is considered slightly better than this one. And, I think it does taper off a little bit around 25 in this draft. But let's say you get a guy like Walter Clayton Jr. at 23. Do you want Walter Clayton Jr. with a year of experience under his belt? Or do you want the 18th pick in next year's draft? I'll take Walter Clayton Jr. with a year of experience, or anybody with that year of experience, because it means you're trusting your scouting. It means you got the guy that you want. And so therefore you're kind of building what you want to do, right? The Pelicans timeline matters on this as well, right? You're not developing for 4 or 5 years in the future. You're not planning for that. This is a team that's trying to win now, win around Zion Williamson. Whether you agree that that's the move or not, this is what they're doing. So your horizon and timeline is next year. That's what matters to this team. If you can get a guy this year that's going to help you win games in some capacity this coming season, that's probably more value to the team right now than whatever that Indiana Pacers pick could be. And again, I don't think that's going to be a top pick at all. They still have Pascal Siakam. He's real good. Ben Mathurin is developing, looks really good. Andrew Nembhard has been great for them, right? That's a team that is very competent, still really good, will re-sign Miles Turner, and that's who they are. They're a good team. It's kind of as simple as that. So, debating whether this was a mistake, you could argue maybe they should have waited on draft night to see. I don't think this deal would have been available on draft night. I think the Pacers were trading this pick no matter what. Whether they were going to trade this pick for a future first next year or something like that, they were moving this pick before New Orleans would have been able to do it on draft night. When you look at them, they have no room to add a rookie to the team, especially before the Tyrese Haliburton injury. So if it wasn't the Pelicans, it would have been someone else that they made this trade with. So I don't know if the timing, while unfortunate, really would have changed anything for New Orleans. I don't think this deal would have been here on draft night at all. When you look at the Pacers salary cap situation, the way their roster is with who's available, who's not, who's going to be back, who's not, all of that matters in the context of this. So yeah, it's unfortunate, but I don't think it changes much, especially if the Pelicans get the guy that they want or get a guy they want in that range, then it's still worth it no matter what. Get your guys, get your players, then improve it. That pick is also top 4 protected. It was never going to be a 1, 2, 3, or 4 pick in the future here. And I still think it's going to be around 20. Give me the guy you want this year with a year of development over the 18th, 19th, 20th pick in next year's draft. So unfortunate timing. Sucks for the Pacers and Tyrese Haliburton to see that injury. That was a fun finals. The Pacers were still in that game, even though Tyrese Haliburton went down. They were leading at halftime. He got injured in the beginning of the first quarter. Right? That's a very good Pacers team. They still have 6th best odds to win the East per FanDuel. Don't count them out just yet. So coming up next, there's a surprise in ESPN's latest mock draft with Tre Johnson from Texas falling to the Pelicans at 7. Let's make sense of that. And is that a smart pick for New Orleans? He's a pretty polarizing prospect along with Ace Bailey. We'll break down Tre Johnson coming up here next in today's episode of Locked On Pelicans. Today's episode of Locked On Pelicans is brought to you by Monarch Money. You ever check your bank account and wonder, where'd all my money go? Between dining out, online shopping, entertainment, it's easy to lose track. So that's where Monarch Money comes in. It's your personal CFO, giving you full visibility and control over your finances. And Monarch Money isn't just a budgeting app. It's a complete financial command center. You can add all your accounts in there. You want to put your bills in there, your savings account, your 401k, student loans, car loan, whatever it is. You can add them all in there and you can see everything. And that's going to start giving you really great insights. Are you spending too much on delivery? Are you spending too much on entertainment and subscriptions? All of those things. And it's all in one convenient place. So take control of your finances with Monarch Money. Use code LOCKEDONNBA at monarchmoney.com for 50% off your first year. That's monarchmoney.com, code LOCKEDONNBA for half off your first year. Today's episode of Locked On Pelicans is also brought to you by OpenPhone. If you're running a business, you know that every missed call is money left on the table. Think about the last time you had an urgent need. Maybe it's like a plumber or service. I had this the other day where I needed a mechanic for something I couldn't do myself. Called around a few places. First couple didn't answer, so I just fourth place answered the phone, talked to them. They got the business. You don't just wait, you move on. And that's why you need OpenPhone. OpenPhone is the #1 business phone system built to streamline and scale your customer communications, all from an app on your phone or computer. OpenPhone is going to let you manage business calls and texts from a single app, and the shared inbox feature is a game changer. Your team can jump into any conversation instantly without missing a beat, and their AI agent handles after-hours calls, answers common questions, captures leads so that you never miss a customer. OpenPhone is offering listeners 20% off their first 6 months at openphone.com/LockedOnNBA. That's openphone.com/LockedOnNBA. And if you have an existing number with another service, OpenPhone will port them over at no extra charge. OpenPhone, no missed calls, no missed customers. And thank you for making Locked On Pelicans your first listen today and every day. We are here Monday through Friday, the #1 Pelicans podcast, covering everything you want to know about this Pelicans team. So please subscribe wherever you get your podcasts and join over 11,000 Pelicans fans on YouTube as well and become an everydayer. That means you listen Monday through Friday to the Locked On Pelicans podcast. For your second listen, it's a 2025 Locked On NBA mock draft 5-episode series with the most comprehensive NBA draft analysis you can get. Find the Locked On NBA mock draft on NBA Big Board and Locked On NBA on YouTube or wherever you listen to your podcasts. All right, some quick programming note. Wednesday draft. That's tomorrow, depending on when you're listening to this. That's exciting. I'm going to be at the Pelicans facility. They are letting me go live from the facility too, somewhere in there, maybe one of their studios or something. So we will be live as soon as that pick's made, breaking it down. We're going to do the normal, 20-minute show or so, and we'll answer some of your questions after that too. And we'll kind of keep going through till the 23rd pick's going to get made. Then we'll probably do a separate show on that later. I'm going to try and get some guests on with me while I'm at the facility, because why not? And you'll be able to catch that show live, or it'll be here on YouTube, podcast form, and on Gulf Coast Sports and Entertainment Network the next day. So let's look at ESPN and their latest mock draft, because there is a surprise in there, and that is Tre Johnson falling to the Pelicans at 7. This is actually a little bit unexpected. Their latest mock draft is Cooper Flagg 1, Dylan Harper 2 to the Spurs, VJ Edgecombe to the 76ers at 3, Con Knipple to the Charlotte Hornets at 4. We'll talk about him a little bit more later. Utah Jazz take Jeremiah Fears at 5. The Washington Wizards stop Ace Bailey slide at 6. And it puts the Pelicans in a really interesting position with Tre Johnson from Texas at 7. This is someone who's kind of consistently been mocked between picks 3 to 6. I haven't seen really one until this one with him at 7 overall. So he's not someone that I've really focused on a ton. And when you look at this guy with really good size at 6'5" for a 2-guard, 6'11" wingspan, really good athleticism, 19.9 points per game at Texas, 39.7% from 3, 87% from the free throw line, and almost 3 assists per game. This is a dude that's just a shooter and shot maker that can get hot from deep. His NBA comps are Tyler Hero and Ray Allen. Those are all real good ones, right? He's an excellent marksman. This is a dude that's going to be an incredible 3-point shooter. But more than that, he can shoot threes in a variety of ways, whether it's off of movement, whether it's catch and shoot, whatever it might be. He's really effective at shooting in almost any way, any capacity. And he's a pretty good ball handler too. He's got a variety of moves in his bags, whether it's crossovers, jab steps, certain ways just to create space to be able to get his shot off. And what I do like about him is he can work off ball too. He's not just a ball dominant scorer. This is someone with a high motor that cuts, that relocates into space really well, and is very good at navigating screens and immediately passes and moves. And I just kind of love that, especially alongside Zion Williamson here. And look, as a freshman to lead the SEC in scoring at all, basically, look, it's 19.9 points per game. Let's round it up and call it 20. That's incredible. The SEC was historically good this year. Sent more teams to the tournament than any other conference before. Look, they also had more teams than before, so there's that too. But to do that as a freshman in a stacked conference is not an easy thing. And given how well he played, his points per game actually went up in conference play, and Texas was not good this year. There was no one else on that team with him to still maintain the same level of production when it's easier to slow guys down. That's a really important thing. If you're just looking for a pure score, microwave kind of score, Tre Johnson is it. He absolutely has that. But here's what makes him polarizing. All of that sounds great, right? Now, there's concerns about his defense, but really when we kind of get into this range and some of these players, is there anyone that doesn't have concerns about their defense? Is something that I think that's worth keeping in mind. He'll be able to come into the NBA, I think, and score right away. But when you dive into his shot selection, it is kind of concerning here. When you look at eligible freshmen in half-court rim frequency, so scoring at the rim, trying to get to the rim, putting pressure on the rim, right? His was 14%, which is basically one of the worst for freshmen in the country. Ace Bailey is ahead of Trey Johnson at 17%. Dylan Harper, by the way, probably the top guard in this draft, is a guy that shoots 38%, has a 38% rim frequency in the half court. So that's showing you that he doesn't get downhill. He's not a downhill attacker like a Jeremiah Fears or some other players in this draft. He's more of a shooter. That is a problem in the NBA, right? He is someone that does have point guard potential. It's going to take him a while to develop that, but your lead guard needs that downhill style of play. They at least need to put some pressure on the rim to collapse a defense. Otherwise, it won't work, and you're just a connective passer, which can be useful, but not as a lead primary initiator of your offense. So not getting downhill, not forcing defensive rotations, what's that going to do to an offense? One thing that's important to keep in mind is shooting does not equal spacing by itself. You need guys that are very good at attacking closeouts. That's something that Trey Murphy really worked on over the past year and a half, and you could see it in his game. He's known as a shooter. They're going to try and run him off the three-point line, and oftentimes that would lead to a bad thing where, okay, what do I do now? And you see that all the time. But Trey started attacking off those closeouts beyond more than just trying to dunk over people. He was trying to get downhill and could do it with a variety of different moves to get around guys. His first 2 years in the league, he struggled with that. Then you really started to see him put that together in the second half of last season, and then this past year was really good at it. I don't know if Tre Johnson has that at least right now. So if you're looking at players that can contribute right now to this team, we just talked about how their horizon is next year. Is Tre Johnson the guy? Is he just going to be a shooter and that's it? And do you need another just shooter and that's it, right? This is not someone who gets to the rim. This is not someone who really gets to the free throw line with the usage rate that he has either. So that's kind of part of the problem when you look at him and go, oh, if he's not getting to the rim like that, that's a concern. And I fully agree with you here, right? Otherwise, he's kind of a little bit more like CJ McCollum. And CJ McCollum's a great player, but this team needs something else. And is that your lead guard of the future? He's your guard of the future, but I don't know if he's a lead guard of the future. And so that's why a lot of people are not high on Tre Johnson whatsoever, is that lack of rim pressure. This is not a Shai Gilgeous-Alexander type of lead guard. Is that what the team needs? I'm not entirely sure. At 7, if he's there, I think you really need to consider it, especially with Fears gone, with Ace Bailey gone. You'd be looking at Tre Johnson or Kaman Malawach in this situation. I don't think those are bad options, but I'd argue this could be one of the worst ways the draft could go, potentially for New Orleans. But Tre Johnson, would fit next to Zion Williamson, I think, and is a guy that has potential upside to be the leading, a scoring champion, I think. He's that good of a shooter, and he's a very good, difficult shot maker. We also talked about, though, the defense, and that's not good. Is he coming to a situation where he's going to be able to succeed and to thrive? I don't know if he would be a day one starter. Maybe he's your microwave scorer off the bench, a la a Jordan Clarkson from Utah kind of player, and I could see that. he's clutch. He gets in there and he just hits shots in big moments. There's something to be said for that. But I am a little bit concerned that, is that the right type of player New Orleans is going to be able to develop, because we've seen some issues with some of that stuff in the past. I don't know. What do you think about Tre Johnson at 7 if he falls to New Orleans? I almost think you have to do it. I don't know if they would, though, if Cayman Malinowitz, someone I know they are very high on, that I've repeated to y'all multiple times, if Malinowitz is on the board, do the Pelicans do this? If Fears is gone? Look, there's point guard upside there. He produced in college. There's something to be said for that. But can he attack closeouts? Can he do those other things that's going to make him, an incredible player at the NBA level? And I think there's some open concern about that right now. So coming up next, we're getting some interesting news from the Charlotte Hornets. Let's break down those latest rumors. A couple of other things here for the Pelicans and guys to look at that I think are going to be on their draft boards. That's coming up here next in today's episode of Locked On Pelicans. Today's episode of Locked On Pelicans is brought to you by FanDuel. Summer sports are in full swing, so whether you're all about baseball under the lights, golf on the green, or high-stakes soccer action, FanDuel is the best way to make every game more exciting. So you're already following the action. Why not make it a little bit more thrilling? With FanDuel, you can get in on the game while your friends are getting sunburned at the beach. They also have the NBA futures. You got the 2 early NBA lines out there for the championship. If you think the Thunder are going to repeat, you're getting really good odds. They're plus 270. Feels like that should be minus after the way they just kind of steamrolled through the NBA en route to a title right now. But just open the app. There's new daily promotions and fun ways to bet every single day. And if you're new to FanDuel, new customers can bet $5 and get $150 in bonus bets if your first bet wins. Just open the FanDuel app today or visit FanDuel.com/lockedon to get started. And thank you for making Locked On Pelicans your first listen today and every day. We're here Monday through Friday, the #1 Pelicans podcast, covering everything you want to know about this Pelicans team. So please subscribe wherever you get your podcasts and join over 11,000 Pelicans fans on YouTube as well and become an everydayer. That means you listen Monday through Friday to the Locked On Pelicans podcast. And you can also catch us on the Gulf Coast Sports and Entertainment Network, the same place where you go to watch Pelicans games. You can get Locked On Pelicans on every day at 10:30 a.m., which is super awesome. We're going to have a lot of great draft coverage coming to y'all this whole week, so we're going to be breaking everything down. So please subscribe. It's going to be a lot of fun. For your second listen, Locked On Saints. I was hanging out with Ross Jackson over the weekend. He was telling me some of the future plans for the show. Big things going over there. Keep up to date with everything black and gold over at the Locked On Saints podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Let me know what you think about Tre Johnson in the comments down below. Couple of things here. Sounds like Knippel is going to go to the Charlotte Hornets at 4. He's mocked at 4 to the Charlotte Hornets in that ESPN mock draft. You're starting to see him kind of get put there a whole lot more. There's starting to be a consensus forming around Knippel. That kind of tells you something, I think. He seems to be the guy that also fits the most with Charlotte. And if they're trying to compete, fit's going to be a really important thing because you just don't need so much redundancy if you're trying to go for it and just kind of want the pieces to fall into place. Seems like Knippel could be there, but I think they're an interesting one because here's another thing to consider, and this comes from Shams Charania over on the Pat McAfee show. And he basically said, look, if a team calls the Charlotte Hornets and they're really interested in LaMelo Ball, they've got to consider it. Look, if you could create a trade around the 7th pick for LaMelo Ball, would you do it? Charlotte, I think, would really consider that. 4 and 7 and a chance to really kind of kickstart some sort of rebuild. They're in a little bit of no man's land. I don't love that for them. I think they absolutely would consider that. But I wouldn't do it if I'm the Pelicans. I think that's just too much injury stuff here in New Orleans between LaMelo Ball, who misses a ton of time, Zion Williamson, and just everything that goes on. None of that's great. And that would concern me. So I don't see the New Orleans Pelicans doing that. But that does then create some intrigue at 4. Is there a way that maybe they're trading up, trading down? Is that going to impact the rest of the draft? The big question right now is, where does Ace Bailey go, and how is that going to influence the next couple of picks? Where Bailey goes or doesn't go, if he doesn't go at 3, that's going to influence the next couple of picks, right? I definitely think his floor is 7 or 8, the Pelicans or the Brooklyn Nets. I don't see him lasting beyond that. But it's, I was trying to think of when does the draft start? Draft doesn't start at 1, it's Cooper Flagg. Draft doesn't start at 2, it's Dylan Harper. Is it 3? I don't even know, because we're not kind of pegging Ace Bailey into that hole anymore. It's most likely going to be VJ Edgecombe. But then does Bailey go 4? Does he not? Like, that's where this starts to get really interesting. And at least this is going to kind of be resolved early in the night on draft night. We're not going to be like searching, waiting for answers for hours when it comes down to it. We'll kind of have an indication, and that should all be played out by 10 and won't be impacting the draft anymore, I don't think. So it's going to be interesting to see how this just all plays out, and I'm not entirely sure. You know, I still think the Pelicans have one of Fears or Malawach kind of as number 1 on their draft board, and we'll pick one of those two guys if they're available. But look, Bailey wasn't supposed to be there and is an intriguing option, even if you don't like the off-court stuff. And again, as I said yesterday, does not matter if a player works out for the team or not. If they just want him, they're going to draft him. It's as simple as that. But you also have someone like Derek Queen that worked out for the Pelicans. He's in that range too. And though he's not a three-point shooter now, does show some of that. There's a lot of Naz Reid in him. That's a kind of needed thing for New Orleans. Is that what they're going to look to try and do? Is that the direction that they go? It remains to be seen. You know, he's someone that could be there. You know, Yegor Demine could be one of those guys that is a wild card in this. And we don't know how Joe Dumars is going to operate here. We don't know how Troy Weaver is going to operate here, given that this is their first draft. But they clearly like this draft and they want players in it. And they're very clearly zeroing in on some people. Who that is, we'll find out pretty soon. And of course, we'll be covering it here on the Locked On Pelicans podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Live show Wednesday night after the draft. I'll also be on a number of different places as well, talking about it all over the place. So that's going to do it for this episode of Locked On Pelicans. As always, I'm your host, Jake Madison, at NOLA Jake on Twitter. This is the Locked On Pelicans podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.